Following President Obama's third Oval Office address last Sunday, many of his Democratic allies say they don't believe he's being strong enough in confronting ISIS, leaving them wanting more from the president. Joining me to discuss this is former Obama Deputy White House Press Secretary, national spokesman for the Obama-Biden 2012 ticket, Ben Labolt. He is also the co-founder of the Insight Agency. It's based in Washington. His partner in that is Robert Gibbs. He joins us from Capitol Hill. Thanks, Ben.
Thanks for having me, Larry.
All right, public opinion polls are showing majority of Americans are not approving of Obama's handling of ISIS. What are your thoughts?
Well, the president addressed this in the Oval Office the other night. We've seen this as an evolving threat. The president has been the lead on building a 65-nation coalition to wage war against ISIS that's included airstrikes in Syria and Iraq. That's included the use of special operations counterterrorism forces on the ground, and that's included a large training mission to ensure that the military on the ground in Iraq that's waging this war day to day has the capabilities to take out the threat on the ground. There's more that can be done, and I think you saw the president call on Congress to take action, to take additional steps. That includes the authorization of the use of force. It also includes doing things to protect our homeland security, like making sure that nobody on the no-fly list is able to purchase a gun here in the United States.
Is the problem, you think, that he appears more professorial than the fighter?
Well, you know, I think that was a criticism of him that started from the right in the first campaign. It's interesting. In the second campaign, I remember one of the major criticisms of the president was that a number of Republicans said that terrorists, too many terrorists were being killed. They should be captured instead to extract intelligence from them. I think you've seen this president being willing to take the fight against ISIS and other terrorist forces wherever they are, no matter in what country they are around the world, and also to counter that with a broader strategy. You know, a piece of this is recruitment, and the way in which terrorists are recruiting members has changed through the use of social media. And this administration is working with both with other nations around the world and with third parties to make sure that ISIS isn't the predominant force on social media, that young Muslims are getting a counter-narrative against that of ISIS.
Do you think maybe since perception is reality, they're not selling it well enough?
Well, I think that after the shooting in San Bernardino, it was critical that the president, as commander-in-chief, come forward and lay out for the American people how he perceives the threat of ISIS, where it stands, and how it's changed. And ISIS has communicated its intentions to attempt to attack not only within Syria and Iraq, but beyond its borders. And we've seen the threat after 9/11, the terrorist threat change. Instead of these complex attacks like 9/11, you're seeing terrorists use social media to recruit and radicalize young people who were not previously in the organization to wage smaller scale attacks. And he laid out a strategy the other night to attempt to meet and combat that changed threat.
All right, the House has passed the US Waiver Program, Visa Waiver Program. The president says he'll sign it. Do you think the Senate will pass it?
Look, I think that both Congress and the administration have been moving quickly to deal with any potential loopholes in the visa waiver program, and are taking a look top to bottom at Homeland Security procedures to see if we need to send further security personnel to foreign airports to strengthen our visa procedures. But I think the president also made a clear case the other night. There are steps we need to take immediately to review our security procedures and to make sure that they're as strong as possible. At the same time as we do that, we need to keep our values intact. And I think some of the rhetoric you've been seeing from Donald Trump and others on the right have really played into ISIS's hands and shown that people like Donald Trump are willing to discriminate based on religion rather than taking a smart and thorough look at our security procedures and what we can do to enhance them.
Are you shocked that Trump would continue to have this following no matter what he says?
There was a recent Wall Street Journal poll that said that 2/3 of Republican primary voters are looking for a candidate not who will find common ground, but will stand his ground. And Democrats were looking for a candidate who would find common ground. And so you can see why outsider candidates on the Republican side have stayed high in the polls at a time when candidates like Jeb Bush are in single digits. That being said, Donald Trump's rhetoric has started to echo George Wallace more than it has the modern Republican Party. Independents and others are certainly tuning in with disgust at some of those recent remarks.
68% of his supporters, according to a USA Today poll, say they'd vote for him if he ran independent. Does that surprise you?
These are not necessarily loyal party voters. If you look at voters who identify themselves as Republicans, the number is actually only in the 30s. So many of these voters tend to vote Republican but identify themselves as independents. I think there's been an anti-establishment fervor on the right. You're actually seeing unity or near unity on the Democratic side. While Sanders had several good months this year, Clinton has begun to consolidate support. But the right is very restive, and I think that you'll see these outsider candidates, whether it's Trump or Cruz, persist in the race for a very long time or potentially get the nomination. And it looks like Trump doesn't plan to quit even if he doesn't get the nomination.
There's a joke going around that Trump is a Democratic mole sent by the Democratic Party to upset things and guarantee Hillary's election.
I wish we were that smart.
It looks good, though. I mean, it's a weird sense, the way he's going. Right, Hillary would be a major favorite if he were the nominee based on all these opinions. It would look like 1964 again.
Well, and I think you're already seeing Republican candidates try to disassociate themselves. That being said, we saw Republican leadership in Congress, while they may have disagreed with some of Trump's remarks this week, say that if he were the nominee, they'd support him. And I think that the fact that they didn't condemn him in stronger terms is telling. They're scared of elements of their base that have been supportive of Trump, whose worst angels he's appealed to.
All right, you are the communications director. You were very heavily involved in the campaigns. You were communications director for Rahm Emanuel's first mayoral campaign. Is it harder for communications directors today with the 24-hour news cycle?
It is, and I would argue that the 24-hour news cycle in some ways has changed in that 24 hours now seems like a century. Through the advent of social media, you're seeing a news cycle or a story play out in 1 hour on Twitter, where a communications director talks to a reporter, the reporter disputes it and has written a story that the communications director then pushes back on within the course of an hour. So things have changed, but it's also allowed the public to more transparently see the process between a campaign and the media, and allowed them to communicate with campaigns more directly. So in some ways, it's democratized the process.
Is Hillary the nominee you would like most?
Look, I think she's got the experience. I think she's got the determination. I think she's shown that she has judgment in tough times facing major challenges. And I anticipate that the U.S. is going to continue to need to address those issues both on the economic front and on the national security front in the next administration. And I think she's the person best positioned to do it.
What Republican candidate strikes you as the best? Who's got the best chance to win among the Republicans, in your opinion?
In the general election?
Yeah.
I think that's a real toss-up. Some would argue that Marco Rubio offers a fresh face. But at the same time, Marco Rubio was on the front end of this wave that we call the Tea Party, whose numbers are at a historic low right now. So I think it's anybody's guess, but I think that Clinton ultimately has the best chance to be president.
You were Rahm Emanuel's communications director in his first mayoral campaign. Are you surprised at what he's gotten into in Chicago now?
Look, the mayor ran during a very challenging time for the city, and he's taken on challenging issues head on. Kids in the city were going to school for the shortest school day and shortest school year of any major city in the country. That is no longer the case because he took it on. The city was facing a historic pension crisis that was going to crash the economy. He passed legislation to prevent that. Anybody who saw the police tapes out of Chicago in the past couple of weeks know that something within the department went terribly wrong. But if anybody is in a position and has the experience to hold them accountable and to promote reform of the entire system, that's Mayor Emanuel, and that he's made absolutely clear is what he's going to dedicate much of his time to.
Were you surprised to see him apologize the other day for the police actions? He's not an apologetic kind of guy.
No, but I think it's refreshing when an elected official is willing to take responsibility for something that happened under his watch, even if he wasn't the individual who committed the act, but more importantly, is committing to seeing reform through to both prevent something like this from happening again and make sure that anybody who committed an act like this is held accountable and sends a message to others.
Thanks, Ben. Ben Labolt, the CEO and co-founder of the Insight Agency.